So how do we set up fax server to do fax over IP? You're basically going to need two additional components: a T38 fax board or a boardless board, and a compliant IP endpoint. You're also going to have to choose a signaling protocol to use, which sets up each fax call. With Fax Server 9.4, there are two main options for the fax board. First, you could use an IP-enabled TR-1034 board. You could also use the SR-140, which is often referred to as the boardless board, since it provides most of the functionality of a TR-1034 board, but it's software only. In the dock transport module, be sure to select the option for TR-1034 series and SR-140 under Bookdrop. The second component you need is an IP endpoint. This is often a Cisco voice gateway, though sometimes you might hear it referred to as just a gateway or even as a router. This is the device that will act as a gateway between the IP network and the PSTN. This device has all the DSPs required to perform the connection over the PSTN, which is why the fax server no longer needs a physical card with DSPs installed in the server. With fax over IP, the fax server no longer has a direct connection to the PSTN. Instead, it leverages the IP endpoint's connectivity to make that PSTN call. Although I have referred to Cisco a few times in this session, we do in fact work with IP endpoints from the manufacturers listed on this slide, like Alcatel, Avaya, Dialogic, Quintum, and 3Com. At the beginning of this section, I mentioned that a protocol is an agreed-upon standard way of communicating. With fax over IP, there's a protocol used for the document transmission, which is T38. To set up the call, a signaling protocol is required, and there are two choices that could be used with fax over IP. The protocols are Session Initiation Protocol and H323. MGCP, or Media Gateway Control Protocol, is a third choice that can be used as a signaling protocol, but it's not directly supported by fax server. That said, MGCP could still be used in a fax over IP installation between the gateways and what are sometimes called gatekeepers or call agents. So you have to choose between H323 and SIP for signaling. It doesn't really matter to fax server which one you choose, but the selection must be made. If the two sides do not agree, they'll not be able to talk to each other and no faxes will be sent. As you can see, if the two endpoints are not configured to use the same protocol, they won't understand each other. When they are configured the same way, here they happen to be using SIP, they understand each other and can then transfer the document using T38. If a company has many gateways scattered around their different locations, you'll probably find a call agent or gatekeeper to help manage all of the gateways. These devices talk to each other using a signaling protocol, which can be any of the three that I mentioned earlier. Fax server can be configured to use fax over IP, communicating either directly to a gateway or via the call agent. Let's go over a few important points to make sure that you have it all. First, there are two types of fax boards that fax server will work with in a fax over IP environment. There's the IP-enabled TR-1034 and there's the SR-140. To connect to the IP network, you either use the Ethernet jack in the TR-1034 or the computer's network jack if using the SR-140. You must choose one of the IP endpoints that are supported by OpenText. You can find further information about these on the OpenText website. When communicating with IP endpoints, two signaling protocols are supported, SIP and H323. MGCP can be used between the call agent and the gateway, but not from the fax server. both the IP endpoint and the fax server must use the same signaling protocol. Okay, so now let's look at a few important terms before we move on to a demonstration. T30, as we discussed at the beginning, is the communication protocol used by all fax devices. T38 is a communication protocol used by endpoints for a fax over IP call. Fax over IP is a method for processing fax communication through an IP network. There are three methods for fax over IP that we covered. T38 fax relay is the fax standard that encapsulates T30 to be transmitted over the IP network. G711 pass-through, like T38, is a real-time solution, but it's very inefficient and consumes a large amount of the available bandwidth. Finally, T37 is a store and forward method that's much like traditional email. Although we support T37, we do not recommend it. There are three primary signaling protocols used in fax over IP. OpenText Fax Server supports both SIP and H.323. MGCP is typically only found between a call agent and the gateway, and it's not supported by Fax Server directly. There are three primary types of IP endpoints that can be used in a fax over IP implementation. An IP endpoint is just a generic term referring to one side of an IP connection. The first type of endpoint is the fax server. A gateway performs an application layer conversion of information from one protocol stack to another, typically linking the IP network to the PSTN. A router forwards data packets at the network layer from one network to another. Although gateway and router are two very different things, the terms are sometimes used interchangeably in fax over IP to represent IP endpoints. You are starting out with fax over IP. There is far more to know about faxing and fax over IP than what we could cover in this session. For more information, we recommend you refer to the Fax, Modem, and Text for IP Telephony book by David Haynes and Gonzalo Seguero. This book is available at ciscopress.com and is one of the most well-used books on my bookshelf. One of the most useful troubleshooting tools available for fax over IP is Wireshark, and Practical Packet Analysis from Chris Sanders will help you take full advantage of this incredible tool. To get more information from Cisco on fax over IP, I like to refer to Cisco's wiki on the topic. For more information on packet analysis, see the blogs of Chris Sanders and Laura Chappelle.